The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A fiercest serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Battle buddies.
Battle buddies.
Yeah, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Yeah,
Hey, that's a sports reference.
yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know. Hey man, I gotta say, it's been really cool having these guests and going over all of our content with the guests.
Pretty cool.
But there's something to be said. I do like it when it's just my partner and me,
Yeah.
my good old pal. You know, the
The Dukes of Hazzard.
dudes who started it all.
The national phenomena.
Yeah, that's right. We're a national phenomenon, just sweeping the country. We're an international podcast.
We're sponsored.
We are. Shout out to the guy who recorded our commercial. Solid, dude.
Man, that was real. I was like so happy to show Hannah, and she didn't fucking laugh once. And I was like, but I'm so proud of it. And then I made you listen to it while I talked to you on the phone, and you said it was the best work I've ever done. And I was like, that's how I feel.
I was laughing so hard that I didn't even realize that it was Independence Day. And then listening to it over and over again, I was like, dude, Kevin needs to be a cartoon character. That's what Kevin needs to be.
Yeah.
So, welcome back to Julius Caesar and the Gaul.
And the Gaul.
We're back. We took a nice little break with some guests. And now we're back to it, back at it. Feels good to be back.
It feels really good.
Feels really, really
It
good.
feels really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's recap.
Give it to me.
So we finished books 1 and book 2, and Caesar had just finished marching through Gaul, helping kill. He was helping people, and he was killing fierce warriors left and right, and he just finished off this group called the Nervi. And we didn't talk about this last time, but Rome had a 15-day celebration in his honor, and that was the longest Thanksgiving Rome had ever had.
Do they still celebrate it to this day?
Like in the city of Rome?
I don't know. Yeah, sure.
I don't think so.
Is there? But okay.
I feel like after you assassinate the guy, you don't hold his Thanksgiving anymore.
Okay, but I have a question.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But they still have like statues of Julius Caesar in Rome right now, no?
Oh, I'd imagine.
I'm pretty sure they do. And so I'm just wondering, like, do Italians?
Yeah.
Do Italians still look at Julius Caesar and be like, what a badass?
I'm sure. He's a capital G great person.
Right? Like,
He
even
influenced the world. Who cares at this point, 2,000 years later, if he was good or bad? Capital G great person.
it's not too soon.
It's not too soon. This isn't us trying to work through the fucking Vietnam War.
Yeah. Because even nowadays, like, it seems like people are shitting on George Washington's grave. So it's too soon there, obviously, still, right?
Yeah, well, because half the people want him to be their hero, and the other half want him to be the villain. He was just a capital G great person. He just did some shit that matters to us now.
Where is this capital G great person that you're getting? Is this like what the kids are saying on the streets?
No, that's a Carlin thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so Carlin, sorry, for
I knew
listeners
that.
I mean, I only really know because last podcast also started adopting it, and it's just really helpful. And for listeners that don't listen to a lot of Dan Carlin, but he basically is saying that there are certain people that do things in time that matter, and focusing on like your modern views of good or bad is not super helpful for understanding them. Whether they were good or bad, they were great in that they influenced the world. And Caesar, huge, great person in that he influenced a lot of shit.
He was a great asshole.
Yeah, he was a great A asshole.
Yeah, dude. So let's get into it. Welcome to Battle Buddies, folks. We're getting into book 3. And
Yeah.
we're gonna get real poetic about it. There's going to be some sonnets.
Some sonnets. You know, I was thinking of combining book 3 and book 4 together, and I still might combine some of like book 4 and book 5, or book 5 and book 6, because I want to focus a lot on the final boss of Vercingetorix that we get into at the end.
Oh, that's such a cool word to say.
know, it's awesome.
That name is awesome.
But book 3 has a lot of battles, and they're pretty interesting, including a naval battle. And I don't want to skip that because that's kind of cool, thinking about ancient warfare and thinking about how they did their naval war. Like,
Scary.
yeah.
Like, really scary. Did they have life preservers?
No.
No.
Your life preserver is dodging the missile that's coming at you.
Your life preserver is your arms, boy.
Seriously, for the Romans.
Get to treading water, boy. Fuck that. Fuck all that, dude.
Well, what about having to build the boat that you're going to then battle on?
No, but I like that. That's like
Fuck that more.
really? Building the boat?
I mean, okay. The like hipster libertarian part of me is like, yeah, fuck yeah, build your own boat, my friend.
Yeah.
But I have to build the boat that then I have to then immediately jump on and then go fight for my life against other boats.
Me thinks that you would build a better boat knowing that you're going to be in it.
Well, a little skin in the game.
You know what I'm saying? And I would also just like, I'm assuming that a lot of guys in the Navy, they get drunk and they're like, yeah, the Ronald Reagan rules. But if you get drunk and you're, in ancient times, you're like, motherfucker, I built that boat. I built that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like that. Do you think they name all their boats? They build a lot of boats in
I
this
hope
episode.
so.
Yeah.
We will name them.
All right.
Can we name them?
No, there's like 400 boats in this episode.
Well, the ones that we can we name a couple?
Sure.
Okay.
Little Dicky, Big Dicky. This is not a grandma's episode.
Yeah, dude, we're done. The dick jokes are coming back in full force this episode.
They are. So I want to, before we go into this next part that you and I are pretty excited about, I have to talk about like what it's like having ADD, like what the psychologist laughed at me when I asked her if I did have it or not, and she was reading my results, and she's like, clinically significant inattention. And I was so excited for these episodes that I wanted to read another book because we were doing all these interviews. And so then I went and read Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, and I was like, this is going to be great. And I read it, and I fucking loved it. And then today I was going to go pull quotes from it that I had dog-eared, and I fucking lost the book because that's just what happens. I got so excited that I did the thing, and as soon as it was done, it was out of my existence. I could not find it anywhere. And that's all I have for that story. It's just
so you
my
have
life.
yet to find it?
Yeah, and I had to return it to McKenna. If you're listening, I'll find it. Or I'll...
Oh, this is the school's book?
This is the school library's book.
Oh my God. Don't feel bad, dude. So
It's fine. Nobody had read that book before me.
No, I know
School
that.
library.
I know that. I know that very well. But I'm married to a person who has crippling ADHD, and I'll put it to you this way. I have to keep track of where her phone is.
Yeah.
If I don't, then I have to hear the question, do you know where my phone is? Which is like...
Maybe that's also a wife thing, because I find my wife's phone a lot. For her.
Really?
Yeah. I know where my phone is.
Bro,
I use it all the time.
So much money on that thing a month that I'll be damned if I don't know where my phone is.
Yeah. I was like,
a
this
monthly
is an
thing.
expensive thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can do everything.
It is a pocket full of knowledge.
Pocket full of knowledge.
Well, I'm sorry that you don't, but the good news is that you finished it.
Yeah, well, I was on Act 5, because then I had to
So you did not finish
escort a kid, yeah. But I got to the part where I got past Caesar dying. That happens really early.
Isn't it called the death of the tragedy of Caesar, Julius Caesar? Is that what it's called?
I think it's just called Julius Caesar.
Hmm.
Anyway, what I wanted to talk about for it is, before we go into all of it, because there's a lot of good things that we could talk about with this book, this play. But let's just pause for a minute to appreciate how crazy Caesar's life really was. When I was reading Shakespeare's Julius Caesar this week, I was reminded that Rome really fucking hated kings during Caesar's lifetime because they had this old ruler, Tarquin. But Caesar gained so much power in his life that he essentially became a kind of king himself. So there's this invisible, to us at least, tension between Caesar's growing fame and power with Rome's fear of kings. And we know that Caesar does eventually make Roman Empire. Therefore, it's hard not to see Caesar playing with this tension during his Gallic campaign. Love him or hate him, Caesar was a politician of almost unparalleled ability.
Fuck that.
Dude, he's wild.
I know, but when I hear people like, oh no, we're scared of him becoming king, like that makes me, the punk rock in me is like, fuck that. Fuck Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want people to be afraid of one king person. We just recently had the coronation. I don't know, maybe that's what's going into my like American bones. I'm just like, fuck kings and Roman like rulers and
That's
things
how
of that
the
nature.
Romans were.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm on their side with this.
Yeah.
I'm scared with and for them.
Well, and what's scary is Caesar is appearing to agree with you the whole time up until the moment he's assassinated.
Smart move.
This is what we mean by capital G great person. We're going to see it in today's book, which is the other reason I didn't want to shorten this book, is he will sometimes dish out fucking brutal punishments to the people he beats. Sometimes, you guys are fine. Lay down your weapons. And it's because he's a fucking politician first and a general second, and he is good at it.
Do we know, because I believe Dan Carlin talks about the addition of Julius Caesar, the book that he wrote that he had, and he was like, there's certain words in here that they just took out that he really likes. And I'm just wondering, like, how close is the translation?
That was my question. So that's what I was saying.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, on our first episode of The Gaul, we were talking about how my only regret doing this series right now is that I'm only reading one translation. And really, if I wanted it to be a modern like historian, I would read an old translation and a modern translation and a linguistic analysis of the translations themselves.
So, I mean, aside from translations,
right?
How much do we think the story has changed from other people? Not just like Julius Caesar probably wrote something cool.
Yeah.
And then how many people read it over time? They're like, let's just tweak this a bit.
I don't know. It feels pretty authentic to me.
Okay.
I feel like Caesar knew what the fuck he was doing the whole time. And he wrote these, I think a lot of other people think that he wrote them to be read in Rome to start building his fame as a politician. And that he was just making moves. And the book feels like that. It's very cut and dry. There's parts where you want to celebrate, and there's parts where you're like, ooh, it's going to be close. And then he gets it at the end because it's just a play in and of itself. But maybe not. I will say every once in a while I'll come across an essay when I was doing a little bit of that research and I was reading the Druid book where some people were like, none of this even happened or this thing has been changed a lot. But the consensus seems to be something to the effect of, it'd be a lot more fun if this was true, though.
Yeah, dude, that's how I feel. When are we going to talk about Shakespeare?
Yeah, let's talk about it right now.
Okay. How do we feel about anti-Stratfordianism?
I don't know what that is.
Anti-Stratfordianism is essentially the argument that Shakespeare, the person William Shakespeare, did not write Shakespeare. And it's kind of compelling. I gotta say, at the end of the day, I personally enjoy the argument a little bit more than all the JFK fun stuff.
Sure.
The Shakespeare one is fun because, have you ever seen the movie Anonymous?
No.
So this came out in 2011. I just recently rewatched it because you told me that we were going to do some Shakespeare stuff. And all of the counterintelligence guys that I was in the military with were obsessed with this movie. Because a big, if true, him pulling this off is the biggest counterintelligence operation in the history of human literature. This argues that, during the time that Shakespeare plays were coming out, Shakespeare plays were extremely provocative.
Yeah.
Very, very much the Elvis of their time. Right. And during this time, the whole movie is basically watching somebody play Crusader Kings.
Okay.
It's all about heirs to the throne changing, and it turns out that noblemen's were really good at writing, and rumor would have it that noblemen would write political plays to try and sway public opinion on the king and things of that, and political opinion, and they would have to write it from the point of view of being anonymous, or else they would get like hung and shit like that. So rumor had it that is like somebody who was heir to the throne was the one writing all of like Macbeth and Hamlet and things of this nature, and trying to put it under the pseudonym of this guy named like Ben Jonson or something like that. And William Shakespeare was a drunk, poor drunk, and in so doing, like being an actor, ended up trying to take credit for it to get money, essentially.
Damn.
All of this is theory. I mean, the biggest, because you know how conspiracy theories work, is like you find one little chunk of information and then you like run with it.
Yep.
The biggest little chunk of information that the anti-Shakespeare people go with is that there's literally no written evidence of any of Shakespeare's shit.
Right.
Like no one's seen William Shakespeare write a sentence on a piece of paper. There's nothing that we hold like, oh, Shakespeare wrote this. So people are like, fuck, dude, like that's concerning.
Yeah.
No? It's fun. I don't know. At the end of the day, somebody wrote it and it's interesting.
That was kind of our approach in college. Took classes with different Shakespeare. We had like one good Shakespeare, just like professor, Kermode. He's British too. It worked. And his kind of point at the end was whether it was all of the actors editing it over time, or it was somebody else, or it was just, it was him. It doesn't matter because the work of the literature itself is like awesome.
Yeah.
So what he spent most of our time doing was like comparing those books against those plays against other plays that were written around the same time. So like I was telling you right before the show.
What kind of people wrote them? Do you know?
Yeah. So like the most famous one, because it's so fucking close, is so Shakespeare wrote a play called The Merchant of Venice, but then there's another play called The Jew of Malta, and that's written by Marlowe. And Marlowe, I think he was like maybe like a secret service guy. Like he got like stabbed and assassinated above a bar, I think. Like that could all be wrong. It's been a while since I was in college, but like it sounds right and it sounds cool. But those plays are like super, super, super similar. But even still, when you read it, you still get that little bit of Shakespeare when you read his. There's just something about it.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah. So for those of you, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter. But for those of you who are interested, go watch the movie Anonymous. At the end of the movie, Queen Elizabeth writes a letter when she finds out that Shakespeare was a fraud. And the first time I watched this movie, this fucking letter talks about how human perception is and what like art does. It moved me to tears.
Nice. Shakespeare in Love is also a fun flick. Doesn't quite move you to tears.
Academy Award winner.
Yeah. Okay. I have some quotes from fucking Julius Caesar we could talk about, because there are a lot of quotes in this book. When I was reading, I was like, hey, we say that. Like, it's all Greek to me. It's all Greek to me is from Julius Caesar.
Really?
The play. Yeah.
Oh, man. That's an interesting. Okay.
The Fault in Our Stars.
Really?
That's from fucking Julius Caesar. The actual quote is, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.
John Green, you fucking plagiarizer.
I love John Green.
Me too.
He's so funny. Go on Instagram and look him up. He's obsessed with tuberculosis, and every post is better than the last.
He's also, excuse me, I think he's a history major, because his crash course on YouTube for history
his crash course is lovely.
Unmatched.
He also does a ton of work in building schools. He's awesome. He's an awesome guy. In Africa.
Dang.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. The famous one, Et tu, Brute, right? When Shakespeare gets stabbed.
What does that translate to?
You too, Brutus.
Okay.
Yeah, because Brutus is famously the last one that stabbed Caesar. And Brutus was like the honorable guy to Caesar. Brutus is going to show up in this book, and he's going to lead part of the forces. Like, he's with Caesar. And so him going against Caesar was like a big deal.
So when someone calls you a Brutus, are they calling you a backstabber?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you are, and it's like, it's out of left field, it's,
Okay.
who's the Christian one? Is it Pompous Pilate? Did he like
Pontius?
Pontius?
Yeah.
Pompous.
He might have been. Yeah, Pontius Pilate is the Roman dude who killed, well,
He like gave him up or something. I don't know. I don't fucking know. Anyway, the thing with Brutus
it's a different episode.
is that I think it was unexpected, and it was a big deal for like all of Rome, and it was very confusing for them.
Okay.
Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war.
That's a metal album name.
Is it?
No, it should be.
It should be. It's fucking dope. And he has these great quotes about cowardly deaths versus like brave deaths. And so a coward dies 1,000 times before his death, but the valiant taste of death but once. It seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. Awesome.
That is very awesome.
And Shakespeare, he references a lot of like Stoic stuff when he's doing this.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a very Stoic
Yeah.
quote.
Because he knows his. So I was also reading about like how accurate is this Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which is good because Harold Bloom, who's awesome, love everything that dude did, and maybe not everything. I don't know everything he did. That's a wild statement. I like a lot of the stuff he's written down.
Who is it? Who are you talking about?
He's just like this literary guy. He's wrote a lot of things that were very compelling. But he wrote essentially that as the years have gone on, he finds that Shakespeare understands the complexity of in the mystery of humanity in Caesar's time more than we give him credit for sometimes.
Yeah, so that has to say that Shakespeare was like a highly educated person.
Yeah.
But he wasn't.
Or they were all
theory.
trying to do it. Because also with Shakespeare's plays, you have to understand is that it went from only religious plays for like 100 years. They could only do religious plays forever. And it was really fucking boring, I imagine, after a while. Like, there's a lot of metal shit that happens in Christianity, but eventually you're like, I also would like to hear anything else.
Yeah. Let me get some comedy.
And so once they were like allowed to, I'm sure some people were like ready for it. Like, let's go.
For sure. No TV, bro. Come on now.
The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones.
Oh, is Beware the Ides of March from this?
Yeah, Beware the Ides of March.
Interesting. Okay.
Because you have in the beginning like this, one of the soothsayers is like, beware! She's like screaming, and Caesar's trying to give a speech. He's like, who the fuck is screaming right now? He like stops everybody. And if you are like a real historian and not like me that just reads literature and sometimes history books, I get it. Caesar was more important than Shakespeare lets on in the beginning. There's all that stuff. I read all those critiques.
Oh, really?
It's just that like it's more fun when you read it through a literary lens sometimes.
Yeah, I want to have fun.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got for that. Oh, there's some cool stuff.
Dang, Kevin made a lot of highlights.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on Shakespeare?
My brother used to say he was just a dead white guy in hell.
Whoa. What a weird sentence.
What a weird family I grew up in, dude. Come on now. Yeah. I don't think he thinks that anymore. He didn't. Yeah. I can guarantee you he doesn't.
I can't imagine him saying that.
Yeah. We've come a long way, Kevin.
Life changes us all. Hey, I used to watch the movie 300 unironically all the time.
Unironically.
Where now I watch it ironically all the time.
Look at these men in diapers running around with spears.
These dudes are jacked. I should lift tires more often.
100%.
So let's see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. We have like 4 battles today.
Whoa.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. And yeah, let's get into it. So Caesar started to head toward Italy. I believe book 3 starts in 57 BCE and ends in 56 BCE. It's a little complicated on the timelines, but I believe that's how it's going to work. The narrative becomes a little more complicated in Book 3 because Caesar's forces are spread out, and we are going to hear about what each different group was doing during the same time. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's the winter of 57 BCE, and Caesar sends Servius Galba, one of his officers, to establish a winter trade route through the Alps, but with the help of his 12th legion. Somewhere in the deep, dark, black forests of Gaul, the drumbeat of war begins to echo and rise. Like a beating heart, bloody and pounding, the call to arms reached Galba's frosted feet. It seemed the Gaul didn't actually love giving all their children as hostages to Romans. They also were beginning to suspect that maybe Romans really weren't going to leave after all.
Damn it.
Cut to Galba setting up winter trade routes through the Alps, gulping loudly.
That sounds difficult, by the way.
That's what the whole
Let's just
time I'm
set
reading
up some
this.
trade routes in the Alps.
You imagine Caesar just like walks by you like, by the way, Lieutenant Fuckface, you get to take my 12th Legion. You're like, dope, 12th Legion, this sounds legit.
I like it.
And set up a trade route through the Alps. Sir, it's December.
Yeah.
You just make that happen for me,
So that's
though.
a thing that they just did?
Yeah. And
gotta
they get
say-
attacked.
I gotta say, it's really hard to listen to this story just being like, and then they do this. It's
Yeah.
like, whoa.
I know.
The logistics alone,
That.
like that's where my mind goes.
Yep.
But it's just a thing that happened.
Just a thing that happened.
The Gaul.
Galba ain't no bitch, though, and summons his bros to form a quick bro council because it was winter in the fucking Alps and the Gauls were probably going to attack them.
Winter is coming.
So this is my metaphor, this like idea of the drumbeat deep in the Gaul, heart of darkness. Like I feel like Caesar's kind of alluding to something like that. And I'm also thinking about like a heart like pumping out this anger. And it helps me visualize why we're going to get 4 conflicts at different parts of this Gaul that's not connected by any one thing, but they kind of still are in that they all don't want to be fucking Roman slaves.
I get it.
Yeah. Okay, so they got this gossip. Gaul's probably coming for him. The Gaul amassed a force, and then they charged Galba. It immediately began to favor the Gaul because they were able to swap frontline soldiers to keep the pressure on, while the Romans barely had enough men to defend their base as it was. The phase of attack went on for 6 hours straight. And this is where Caesar is talking about it's not great for the Romans right now because, yes, they're fighting very bravely because they know they're all going to die if they lose. But we've talked a lot about infantry battle and ancient infantry fighting, and you need reserved forces. You need to be able to swap out lines. And he said the way that Galba reports it to Caesar is they barely had enough guys to cover the fort. And so they were just fighting, and if they were like, well, if you die, then nobody's there anymore. And this is where the 12th Legion just shows how crazy they are.
But I don't want the 12th Legion.
I know.
I'm anti 12th Legion.
But the 12th Legion being the balls to Caesar's dick. That one was for you, Grandma. Hope you're proud of me. Love you. Informed Galba that they made a choice to put everything into a sally. A sally, much like a sortie that we covered in Vietnam, is a short tactical attack. In Latin, the word is eruptio, which I think is very appropriate.
Erectio?
Eruptio.
I know what I said.
Romans, having the benefit of being a professional army, were able to activate their sally from all sides of their base at the exact same time. It was an explosion of desperation and rage, and the Gauls were unable to effectively rally against the sally. So, as Caesar effectively puts it, fortune shifted.
Boo.
I know. But you gotta feel for the underdog. They are the underdog in this moment.
Yeah. Well, they're just a professional army.
They're just
That's
professional
what they're
army.
saying, dude. Yeah, I get it.
But
get
the
it.
way that it's described is that like the Legion like kind of like walks up and like grabs Galba and is like, hey, we're gonna do something. Like, this isn't cool and we have a better idea. We're just gonna put it all on the line.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If you're gonna win against the Gaul, I like when you have to make it a close run thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
So they were able to win. It ends up being this kind of drawn out thing, but Galba puts it down. So he's
Jeez.
safe
And this is all while trying to still do a trade route in the Alps
in the winter.
in the winter. Where's the movie?
Where's the movie of that?
That's what I want to know.
You make a whole movie of that one. Okay.
Mel Gibson.
So now
Mel Gibson is Julius Caesar.
Mel Gibson as Julius Caesar.
That seems like that's like when you were saying that the things have shifted and you were like had this like beating heart and like the drums. I was like, no, this is turning pretty Gibson-y.
That is kind of
Getting some
Bravehearty.
Gibson
Yeah.
vibe. Yeah.
Would he be Caesar? Would he play Caesar as like a lethal weapon? Just crazy?
I would watch the fuck out of that movie.
I think I would like the mullet Caesar.
Yeah, dude.
High on cocaine.
Bring
Yeah.
it. Because you know what? Mullets are back.
They are back. It's weird.
It's very odd.
Yeah. Okay, the Venetans, the start of war. Now, it's time to get into some naval warfare. The Gaul did it all. The start to this war is fairly interesting. Caesar sent Crassus to the west coast of Gaul. There, they started to run out of food. Not great. So, Crassus sent some envoys. I read them kind of like military diplomats. Sometimes they're called ambassadors to different tribes for food. So the Gauls took these envoys as hostages and said, "We will give you our hostages if you give us yours." Basically, they wanted to trade hostages.
Did they get food?
Well, because Caesar has collected hostages from like every tribe,
Right.
And so these, what are we calling them? The Venetans.
Mm-hmm.
So the Venetans are like, hey, you got a bunch of our kids and our princes and our senators, give them back and we'll give you back these ambassadors.
Okay.
How does that sound to you right now? Like as like a thing to do?
It's just a little swappy swap.
Yeah. Caesar and Crassus freak the fuck out.
Why?
They freak out. This is like, how unpredictable can these Gauls be? They go on these rants about it. They're like, what the fuck? No one does this in this world. Like, can you even possibly believe something like this would happen? Who could have seen this coming? You see, Caesar considered taking of envoys to be an outrageous violation of how things are done. Does that remind anyone of the 300 Spartans? The Gauls then got the whole coast in an uproar when they started urging the other states to preserve the liberty which they had inherited from their ancestors, rather than to prefer to endure Roman slavery.
Let's go.
To me, this is a little bit of Caesar, you doth protest too much.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, I
Dope.
get it.
That's dope. That's the direct quote. The other
Yeah.
states to preserve the liberty which they had inherited from their ancestors rather than to prefer to endure Roman slavery.
Yes,
It's dope as I'm so on board with the Gaul, dude.
I know. But the thing that makes Caesar complicated is he wrote that in his book. He was like, I'm writing this down and everyone's going to read this in Rome.
Yeah,
Complicated fella.
that is complicated. Being a general veteran is a fucked up place to be, dude.
Absolutely.
I can't even imagine the amount of wine that dude drank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he'd have to.
100%, bro. He's just walking around with purple teeth.
All right. Crassus began to build an armada on the Loire River, with plans to then sail them down to the Atlantic Ocean. Caesar decided to also prepare for war. His reasons were the hostages, some small bullshitty reasons, and an honest fear that if the Veneti were not defeated, they would rally all of Gaul to also rebel. The Veneti were not the heart of Gaul, but they were supplying blood to it. Caesar says, all men naturally love liberty and hate the state of slavery. He thought that he ought to divide his army and distribute it more widely before more states should league together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
I he has a good read on this.
Yeah, I do. I would agree that men like freedom. Yes.
And these Gauls, the Veneti, they're pretty good. So they have contact with Britain. They're one of the only people that can like really get to them. We'll read a little bit more about their background in just a second, but they are solid and they have the respect maybe of a lot of Gauls. And so Caesar's worried about them politically.
I was going to ask, so are the Veneti, are these the ones that are responsible for the Gauls' navy? Like the Gaul don't have like an actual navy because it's just so many different cultures that they're from so many different lands that they might be like landlocked and not necessarily have like access to water?
Yes. And I am simplifying so much of like the Gaul, even from Caesar's documents, because Caesar does list out all the tribes. And it's not just the Veneti that are naval Gauls, but they're the main ones. And so like there always kind of is one that he refers to more than the others as like they're kind of in charge of it. But it is multiple Gallic tribes.
Yeah.
Armadas are kind of linked together, if that makes sense.
It does.
But for the sake of time and our sanity, I'm not going to read out. It is literally laundry lists of Gallic tribes many times in just this book.
Brevity is worthwhile, friend.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if our listeners want that.
Nah. They're just doing their laundry right now. And
if that is what you want, email us at battlebuddiespod@gmail.com.
Totally.
Let us know.
Yeah, dude, we can oblige.
And going off of your I want the Gaul to win, I was looking at our last poll about who do you want to win. 0% want Caesar to win.
Let's go. Smart audience. I side with our audience. We have smart listeners.
I wonder if we have like one person that's yes, but like, I'm not clicking it. I'm not going to be associated with that later.
That's
okay.
funny.
Let's
Cool.
go
Good to
into the Veneti battleground and the navy. The Veneti have towns at the end of these essentially fingers, kind of from the way it interacts with the ocean. And every 12 hours or so, the tide comes in and makes access by land impossible. So pretty awesome, right? Already off of that. Plus, the constant tide makes it almost impossible for ships to invade these towns. Remember, the Gauls were almost always at war with each other. This would naturally mean that they would know how to make very secure towns. Apparently, they were successful at defending against the Romans during the previous summer. Reason being, these towns also worked very well against the storming and siege tactics the Roman had been using as well, which we talked a lot about.
They're really good at it.
When the Romans did start to overwhelm a town with sieges and towers, the people of the towns would simply get in their boats and go to the next town. And Caesar's like, it was really annoying. All summer, we chased them around and no one died.
Interesting.
The big advantage that these Gauls had over Caesar was their navy. Romans struggled with the tides of open waters. Remember at this point, we learned about this when we read our book about the Black Death, that up until very recently, Europeans weren't sailing on open water unless you are select groups like the Vikings or apparently the fucking Gauls. Most people weren't sailing out in the ocean, or at least not very far. But the Gauls, they didn't seem to really mind because they're just crazy people. So the Romans struggled with the tides of open waters, which is a statement that I guess makes sense to some people. The Gaul, there's a lot of that when I go over the boats. The Gaul did not, and it came down to the ship differences. When describing Gallic ships, Caesar writes, their keels were considerably flatter than those of our ships, in order that they might more easily cope with the shoals and the ebb tide. Their prows were very high, adapted to the force of sea waves and storms. Their ships were built entirely of oak to endure great violence and buffeting. The cross timbers, made of beams a foot thick, were fastened to the sides with iron bolts as thick as a man's thumb. The anchors were secured by iron chains instead of ropes. They used sails made of hides and leather dressed thin, either because of their lack of flax and their ignorance of its use, or more probably because they thought that such strong storm of the Atlantic Ocean and such violent gusts of wind could not be withstood by ordinarily sailed, and such heavy vessels could not conveniently be managed by means of sails.
Interesting.
Yeah. For those that don't know anything about boats, a keel is the weighted part at the very bottom of a boat. If you're like in a traditional sailboat that has like a dagger board, it's like literally a lead beam that hangs down directly from the middle bottom of your boat. That makes it so that when the sailboat goes sideways, it doesn't flip over and spin around.
That's interesting that it's saying that they adapted to the tides.
Yes.
They made a boat that adapted to the tides. That's fucking brilliant.
Yes. And then like the whole thing being made of oak, that is a sturdy ship.
Yeah. The way that he's explaining the ships, I'm like, damn, these sound like legit ass boats.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
We'll learn more about what happens when they fight, but these boats are no joke. Like,
using leather as sails, and
that ends up being a problem for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he calls it. He's like, maybe it's the ignorance.
That. Yeah, he did say that. I thought he was just throwing shade, just to throw shade, because he was like, I can't say it's all perfect, but no, apparently that is a problem. Does it just get like too soppy and like heavy?
Yeah, they can be manipulated.
Okay. Oh, I see.
So the Roman boats did have the Gauls beat in terms of speed from, I think, a combination of sailing and oars. So, and I might be talking out my ass here, but I believe that the Gauls didn't use oars. That they literally just used them as sailboats.
Mm-hmm.
And that if they used oars, it was essentially like they didn't mean anything to them. But the Romans were professional army, so like they clearly had trained themselves to do oaring.
Mm-hmm.
That speed did not matter when there was a gale wind, though, because they could take the wind to rocky, shallow water Roman boats couldn't follow, which is so badass. Even though they are slower, if there's a good wind, they could still fight and then go run away to the intense areas where they know Romans can't follow. The two other common Roman tactics, missile fire and grappling hooks, also struggled because of the Gallic boat height. So Caesar sets up a fairly bleak picture of this eventual naval battle. The other thing is that Romans like to ram boats. That's like one of their main tactics, and they can't ram them because they're made of oak. And they have steel faceted across the sides.
That's what he was saying. Yeah, that's crazy.
And so he was saying Romans take their boats and they ram the shit out of whoever boat they're going against, and they grappling hook those boats. They throw missiles at them, and then they just jump over and kill them all.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't
pirate shit.
Yes, and they can't do any of that.
Got it.
So Caesar, and this is now the start of the battle. Caesar and Crassus meet up and prepared for battle. Caesar reported that the enemy had 220 ships, so we will guess that the Romans had something comparable. And
that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, dude.
Again, all the numbers could be made up, but it's more fun to think if they're not. Let's take a moment to build the battlefield in our minds. The River Loire connected to the Atlantic Ocean in a small bay south of the eventual battlefield. The fleet traveled northwest following the coast, eventually turning northeast to enter the natural gates of the Venides Bay, the Bay of Quiberon. The Gallic fleet, facing southeast, was ready to meet them. Just to the east of both fleets was Europe. South was the entrance to the bay, and west was the natural barrier of the bay itself. Brutus was in charge of Caesar's fleet. I believe it's the Brutus that stabs him at the end of his life.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert, Caesar dies. And apparently had no fucking idea what to do. One of their plans was to make towers on the Roman boats to throw missiles at the Gaul, which they did. But they couldn't make the towers tall enough to work. Which I can't imagine how tall those towers were on the boats that they were on.
That sounds sketch. That sounds like a no-no.
You know they were taking their skinny guys like, you gotta climb it.
Do you know what I'm thinking of? That scene in Forrest Gump when Lieutenant Dan is on the top of the boat during during the storm, screaming at God like, "Come on, motherfucker!"
Oh man. Yep. That's now what I'm thinking. Their other plan ended up being far more successful. They created a complicated siege-type spear that would lodge into the Gallic ship, pulled tight by a rope, and then the rope would inevitably snap at the force from both of the boats rocking.
Wait, so
yeah,
the spear goes into the oak wood?
I imagine
in theory?
In theory, I think they like throw it, it gets stuck into the boat somehow, or into the sail. And then there's a rope that's tied to it. I thought they were going to use that to like pull the boat close, but no, it's supposed to break. So then it creates like this rocking motion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right?
Jeez.
Kind of gnarly, like really
Wow.
cool. I've never heard of anything like this.
Hmm.
The rope would snap. The force from that snap would then rattle and bring down the Gauls' heavy sails. Gallic ships didn't use oars like the Romans did, so they were done. Caesar said that his plan required a lot of courage and that the men lacked none because they could see Caesar watching them from the shore just butt-ass naked.
Truly?
No. But he did say that he was like, they just loved looking at me. They loved knowing I was on the hill. He sounds like Trump. He's like, they just loved knowing I was on the hill taking count of what they were doing. All right.
Do you see Caesar up there? He's hanging dong. Caesar.
Once the sail went down, the Romans would throw around 3 ships to encircle the one Gallic ship, and then the Romans would find a way to board the boat. They're unclear about that. It sounds like it was sketch still, like climbing onto that. I imagine Gauls are always hard to fight, and getting them all riled up like that is not great.
Yeah.
The Gauls watched this happen a few times, realized they needed to make a tactical retreat to figure out how to battle it, which is also the first time I've heard of them really doing this. Like, they've made a couple tactical retreats, but not really. This is like a legit, they're like, oh, we don't know how to do this. Like, we don't know how to fight against this idea.
Yeah.
Which is really cool that, like, we're seeing the Gauls being these competent people. So they turn around. But the wind suddenly died, and they were stuck right where they were.
No.
This doesn't
that
work. This doesn't work because I wrote this in, but I didn't know Spencer was going to be able to read it. It's so clear. But I said Spencer's probably going to say no because he usually says no.
Was that good acting?
That was great.
I am on the Gaul side, so this is a moment in the movie theater where I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
God damn it.
And it's like God's fault right now.
Fucking Julius Caesar.
All right. This ended up being lovely for Caesar because he could just take down the entire Gallic navy in one day. Up till now, Caesar had been pretty soft with his punishments, right? He's given a lot, the Sedui or whatever whoever he conquered in the beginning of the story, he just let them stay in the Cisalpine Gaul area. He's like, hey, these soldiers are really good. Like, let's just let them stay in your villages and they'll protect you now. Like, done with that. And he killed all the Germans because the Gauls asked him to, I guess. So that was brutal. But the Gauls that were there, he didn't like punish and kill all of them.
He's running out of steam. He's running out of patience.
No.
No?
No, we're going to see him talk to people later on and he doesn't do the shit. So this ended up being lovely for Caesar because he could just take down the entire Gallic navy in one day. Up till now, Caesar's been pretty soft with his punishments, but he really didn't like that they took ambassadors.
Oh, we're still on that.
He seriously, when you read this part of the book, he is pissed. So he executed all of the senators and sold every single person into slavery.
Okay, so yeah, he's upset.
He's
mad.
This was a no-no for him.
Okay, that was a big whoopsie daisy.
That was a huge whoopsie daisy, I guess.
Yeah.
This is one of those things
I'm curious, why did that trigger him so bad?
Well, okay, we talked about this at the Thermopylae. I've been trying to think about why is this such a big deal. Carlin talked about it in his Thermopylae stuff about they believed that the messengers were protected by like Hermes, like they are literally protected by gods in a lot of these mythologies and these power structures. I think because their whole world would break down if you can't have messengers go talk to each other.
Couriers, yeah. It's like tampering with mail.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big no-no.
When you're a kid, like, why is it a federal crime to read somebody else's mail?
Totally.
And as you're an adult, you're like, don't fucking read my mail.
Don't even look in my mailbox, bro.
So, but I still don't get it in that, like, I think he's done some shady shit too, like invade Gaul. But whatever. I guess this would be a whoopsie daisy I would make if I was time traveling. Because if a bunch of ambassadors were coming and I was at war with that person, I'd be like, gonna capture you, idiot.
Okay, that's really good insight, Kevin. Good job making that connection.
Yeah. on to our next battle. The drums of war beat louder. This is Sabinus' war. So Sabinus, who is one of Caesar's lieutenants, I don't know exactly what Crassus's rank was, or even what Galba's rank was, but I do know that Sabinus was a lieutenant, and that will matter in this story. He learned that a new leader began to grow an army of traditional barbarian propaganda measures. So we'll take this with a grain of salt. That it was made up of bandits whom the hope of plunder and love of war lured away from farming and daily toil. But doesn't this also sound like the Roman or really any professional army? And this got me thinking about a philosophical question. Is every member of a professional army not just a traditional barbarian?
Currently? Or just in general?
Just like in general, because if you are choosing not to make food, you are doing something different from that. Like you're trying to get away from the daily toil of food making.
And that would be considered the definition of a barbarian?
I don't know, because this is kind of like, it's bandits whom roam and hope for plunder and love and lured away for war. Like,
I mean, it's dope. I like it.
It's just got me
cool.
thinking. I was like, I'm not coming down on either side, but it does make me think more about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Interesting.
So sorry, did you have something?
No, that's just interesting.
Yeah. The Gallic leader, Viridovix, he made a camp around 2 miles away from Sabinus. He formed lines and presented for daily battle, which has been a thing that we've seen a lot, right? Like you wake up in the morning, you eat your eggs, and then you put on your armor and you form lines so that you can have some war. But Sabinus did not engage. Everyone, even the Romans, thought that Sabinus was being a coward through this. Like he was getting criticized by everyone. The Gauls were like, he's a big old bitch. And the Romans are like, you're a big old bitch.
I'm assuming he's just being smart.
So Sabinus, Caesar, right? He goes on for like a paragraph about like how much everyone hates Sabinus right now. And then he's like, Sabinus said that he just felt like a lieutenant shouldn't engage with an entire army without a high-ranking officer to sanction it.
How dare you?
I was like, that's fucking either discipline or a great cover story if you didn't want to be in charge of the battle.
I believe in him.
I'm cool with both answers, actually. This is the most I've liked a Roman general or like officer so far.
Okay.
And what's cool is what happens next. So Sabinus wanted to use this idea of cowardice, though. We've talked about the Cisalpine Gauls, that the Romans are using Gauls all the time in these battles, right? Because that's who their whole cavalry units are. They have lots of Gauls. They have lots of hostages. They have, they're working with Gauls. It's not like Romans versus Gauls. It's just like a straight black and white thing that like a movie would portray. So he sent one of his Gauls to deliver a message that the Romans were scared and that they were going to retreat. This would then become an ambush. And the coolest part is the reason why he says it's going to work. So Sabinus says the reason why they're going to buy it is the fact that men, as a rule, willingly believe what they want to believe.
Damn.
That true.
I mean, yes. Some people would call it cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, right. I was like, this is just totally what we see.
But I guess that is just being a man, isn't it?
Woo.
Pride and ego is a motherfucker, dude.
Yes. The plan worked really well, too. But we need to understand a reoccurring geography theme in these battles. The Romans, as per the usual, made their camp on a small hill. They dug a small trench around it. So the Gaul had to carry a lot of wood and brush to fill the trenches. We haven't talked about this a lot yet, but this does come up more and more, especially we're trying to build up a lot of like little clues for the final siege that takes place in book 7, because the final siege is just like, it's so fucking complicated and epic and awesome.
It ends tonight.
No, it doesn't. It ends in weeks. It's crazy.
I'm quoting The Matrix.
I know.
Kevin.
There's multiple walls. There's sieges within sieges. It's crazy. Anyway.
I'm excited.
So we need these trenches. We need to understand there's trenches usually built. We've talked a little bit about you build the rampart, you build the trenches.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about how you fight against those things. And the way you fight against it is you chop down wood and you get briar and you get bushes and you just start throwing them into the trenches.
Oh, God.
So then you can then run across it.
Jeez.
But imagine also that the Romans keep building their fucking camps on top of hills. And so you have to run up a hill with all that fucking wood.
No, fuck that.
It would work if you think that they're going to run away and that they're not ready for a fight. It wouldn't work if they were totally hoping that you were counting on that.
What does the Gaul do?
So the Gaul had to carry a lot of wood and brush to fill the trenches. The Gauls win or lose most of the fights by the intensity with which they start. So, because they
Interesting.
started slower than normal, Sabinus ordered a sally out of their 2 gates. The Gaul lost and immediately ran.
Okay.
It did not. It was a lot of his battles. He'll give you a little bit more. Caesar gave nothing. He's like, they fucking didn't stand a chance. They were dumb there.
Okay.
And here Caesar offers perhaps the best critique of Gallic warfare that we can have. And I think it's just the recurring theme. For while the Gauls are temperamentally impetuous and ready to undertake war, they are also characteristically yielding and not at all capable of meeting reverses. Think back to every battle we've covered so far. The Romans have had close wins and easy wins, but the Gauls have never had anything considering a win without a strong start. I would argue that in a lot of these conflicts, like the Seduine one stuff, they kind of could say that they won, right? Like they won parts of the skirmishes, but they've never had a chance of winning when they didn't start out with the advantage already.
It just as a sports watcher, it makes me think of all these stats that you hear when you're watching like baseball or basketball. It's like when this team gets up by 10 points in this quarter, they win all the time. So for the Gaul, if they're in the first quarter starting the game off strong, they will win. If they let the other team trample on them, it ain't going to happen. That's really interesting. I wonder if it just is like a momentum thing, if it fucks with their morale or what.
I personally, and I don't have a lot of evidence for it, but I think it's 2 reasons. One is that we're still at like the tip of Gaul. In terms of like, if we're thinking the heart of darkness or like the heart beating, we're not deep into the forest yet. So you're not.
This is Gaul light, is what you're saying.
Kind of. And that may not be true, but that's how I'm feeling the narrative at least is constructed. And then the other thing is that these Gauls are tribal and they're used to tribal skirmishes. And so them building these armies, it's amazing even that they could do as well as they can.
Yeah, it truly does sound, unfortunately, like a war of technologies.
Yes.
And Rome has slaves.
Yeah.
It has people to build this shit for them. Whereas the Gaul are like, yeah, I built that boat.
Yep.
I built that boat.
But that's going to change. So
Okay.
we're essentially, this book is cool because now we're going to start phasing out of this early Gallic skirmishes that we've been covering, and we're going to start getting some hints at much bigger conflicts and a much different Gaul army. Drums of war beat louder. Crassus entered the territory of Aquitania. Apparently, this was a place that Romans had lost in the past, so he was spooked. He approached the territory of Sodiates. The Sodiates didn't like that, so they immediately gathered up a large force in return. Unlike the Nervi, the Sodiates focused much more of their forces on cavalry. The cavalry attacked the Romans during a march, started to run away, and then used hidden infantry to ambush the pursuing soldiers. Pretty gnarly. The Romans sieged the town of Sodiates. The Gauls tried to use copper mines to break the siege towers. So so all of a sudden, like, this is a totally different Gaul, right? Like, this is not at all what we were seeing earlier. Like, these guys are gnarly, and we're learning more about their technologies and stuff. Like, they do have minds, and they do know how to like have secret passageways, and they do know how to try to break siege towers. And they may not know exactly the lengths at which Roman siege towers work, but they also know how to ambush with fake retreats. Like, this is...
And so what would change a skirmish deeper into Gaul to change these technologies as opposed to the Gaul light that we were talking about, like in the Veneti and stuff like that? Like, is there an answer to that, or do we not really know?
I think there's two possible answers. One is it's a literary technique that Caesar's deploying
Okay.
to make the narrative more
A story.
compelling. So it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's that these Gauls are, because they only are surrounded by Gauls, they are still the hardened Gauls. They aren't softened by the Italian merchants that keep giving them wine.
Interesting.
So those are like the two theories that go around in my head.
I would also imagine. So this is further inland.
Yes.
Okay. So now all of your time and resources are for land warfare.
Yes.
Whereas if you were closer to water, you would have to split some of your
Yes.
time and resources on making sure you have a navy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this battle, I kind of condensed a lot of it. It is fairly interesting, but we're going to cover a lot of battles very similar to this later on. And so I don't want to necessarily repeat the same things. But ultimately, the Romans win. This was unsuccessful. But this was the most fight that they had so far. And so they sued for peace, and it was granted to them. Which, I mean, the ambush was apparently okay. Like, it wasn't a big deal. They're like, we did a fake retreat and ambushed you. But like, that's just war. Like that.
It's just a Thursday, friend.
But you took our embassy, or you took our ambassador hostage and kept him alive. Like, you fucking bitch. All right. This, to me, is clearly a moment when Caesar wants the common Roman citizen to understand how expert he is in dealing out punishments. Like, this, to me, is a signal to the Roman people. Like, look, I am so good. I know when to do this, when not to do this. I'm relaying a secret message to you, the people, of like, I am the guy who knows how to do this
Just
stuff.
a master politician.
Yes. While the peace talk was happening, the Gallic leader, Additumus, charged from another part of the city with 600 Solduri soldiers. The Solduri soldiers, they're not quite the Gaezite, but they are super fucking elite. And they're described in this book as being like the closest possible manly man, like, bond.
So
There
like,
was even
some like Navy SEAL type.
no, way more.
Oh, really?
There was even something about that if one of them dies through violence and the others weren't there, they like have to commit suicide.
Whoa! Holy shit!
Yeah, these are the real deal guys.
Oh my God, bro. Okay,
Yeah.
man. There's no comparison.
There's no comparison to
Okay,
that.
all right, fair enough.
And I could have read that a little bit wrong because Caesar, he just gives these little quips and then he's like, all right, moving on.
I like it.
Yeah.
Who is okay? The Solduri.
Yeah.
I would like to make some shout out. I want to return to them in the future with other.
Yeah. Like
battles.
compare them.
That's dope. That's the dopest
Yeah.
shit I've ever heard.
The fight was intense, but Additumus did not have the numbers to win, right? He's not going to win with 600 guys. And he probably knew that. But his soldiers are like these intense elite soldiers. So they just went and fought. And then they lost, and then they sued for peace, and they got it. And I'm like, it's interesting that this is also not a faux pas to Caesar. Like, he's like, all right, you're fine.
That's wild, dude.
Yep. Okay, we're not done with this area, though. So every Roman fight sends a ripple into Gaul's heart, and the drumbeat returns. Hearing that the Romans were taking cities in Aquitania, Gallic people begin to form an army. Unlike previous one, these men were described by Caesar as being militarily gifted and trained. These armies knew how to block roads. They knew how to spread out their camps. They knew how to fortify their bases. And they were growing in numbers every day. Crassus became concerned over what an army like this could accomplish against him given time. So, and I quote here, he thought that he ought not to put off fighting a decisive battle. Ooh, I get chills when I think of that. I wonder how long those war council meetings are when you're deciding to risk it all. I thought about this all day when I was eating, like, especially when I was eating my lunch, just sitting there, like, pondering these questions that we're going to talk about today. What is that fucking meeting like when you know that it's not a sure thing. It's going to be a close run thing if you fight right now. But every day you don't fight and risk it all on a coin flip, they are going to get that much closer to just guaranteeing the victory against you.
Mm-hmm. Because you said they're getting larger and larger every day, right?
Yeah, because these ones are militarily gifted. So like they're winning. The subtext here is that they are actually blocking off roads, and they are actually blocking supply lines, and they are actually spreading out camps enough to make sure that the Romans can't just set up camp on every hill that they want to.
Well, so what does Caesar do?
Well, and this is Crassus right now, because Caesar. This is why I said this part's a little confusing.
No worries.
So
what we have you
Caesar
for
is still kind of with the Veneti right now. So it's at the same time he's fighting the Veneti, and that's brought up a couple times here, that these guys are also emboldened because they don't know yet that Caesar's going to beat the Veneti.
Okay. So what does Crassus do?
So his war council, they decide. They're like, let's flip the coin. And the Romans formed double lines.
Hold on. Do they actually literally flip a coin?
No. But he said that
Okay.
he said that he did not want to. He said, I ought not to put off fighting a decisive battle. And whenever Caesar talks about a decisive battle, he means it can go either way.
Right. Okay.
The Romans formed double lines with auxiliaries in the middle, but the Gauls did not leave their camp, which is weird. They
got a plan up their sleeve, bro.
The Gallic strategy was to block the roads and supplies to weaken the Romans. They wanted a long-term win. They wanted what Caesar called a bloodless win. They wanted to strangle him. They wanted to suffocate him.
Smart.
It is smart.
Using brain, not brawn, right?
When the Romans learned that the Gauls weren't leaving camp, they got rowdy. He said that they got all the Romans got like indignant. Like, you're not taking us seriously? You're not going to meet us out of your camp? And he said like all the young dudes were just fired up.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
We've been training this long to fight and you won't fight.
Yep.
Come on, pussies.
They were for sure saying that.
Yeah.
So the battle played out sort of as a reverse to the Sabinus one. Romans filled the trenches while the Gauls defended. Both sides exchanged missiles. And here Caesar admits that the Gauls were very effective in the missile fire because they had the advantage. They were military trained. This is more like them fighting a Roman army. And so he said, when Caesar talks about him losing men, it's just like, and it was not effective. Like he says it like that. Like he's not going to say like, we lost a shit ton of men and it was my bad. He's just like, it wasn't not effective at what they were doing.
Mistakes were made. Things were happening.
All right. We also get some fucking hilarious tactics from Crassus. While the auxiliaries who are in the middle of these double lines, in whose fighting ability Crassus had little confidence by bringing up stones and weapons and sods for building a rampart, presented the appearance and impression of combatants. So there's a bunch of like me's that are like, Kevin, we know that you're not very good with the axe, but we're going to put one in your hands and you're going to stand there and just look scary.
Yeah, sure. It reminds me of how in the Battle of Midway, they had to get hella shit off of the planes to make it lighter so that they could go off the deck like quicker. And then they painted broomsticks black and put them out. Yeah, to make it look like guns. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
That's a great connection there. We should form a podcast. I like the way you think.
Buddies, dude. There's no getting rid of me now.
So Crassus then sends out cavalry as scouts. And they reported that there was a weak spot at the rear gate, which would make sense, right? If you had these big camps that are facing each other, the part that your guys are going to slack on, that you're not going to necessarily whip them over, is in the back of it. Because you're 2 miles away already. He promised the cavalry a lot of money. I think he called it treasure. Like, I offered them many treasures to go the long way around the forest and then go attack that gate. They did. They made some kind of shout or call that could be heard from the other side of the camp, and then all hell broke loose. Here is Caesar's description. Then our men, hearing a shout in that direction, began with renewed strength to fight more fiercely, as generally happens when there is hope of victory. With the defeat, most of Aquitania sued for peace.
Dang.
But that was the most near-run thing we've had so far.
The battle cry is cool.
Yep.
I like the battle cry being heard from across the battlefield. I also am wondering, since he had to bribe these dudes to go around, like, how was that just such like an arduous little journey, or like why do you think he had to bribe these dudes to go around to flank them from the back there?
They've talked about it a couple times. Whenever they have to ask the Gauls to do something sketchy, they essentially say like, "We'll pay you more."
Okay. All right. Money talks, huh?
Yes. When they had the Gaul go over to say that they were leaving because they were scared, they were cowards, that they offered that Gaul a ton of money
Okay.
because he's putting himself in danger.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
it is interesting.
Yeah, it is truly that is what the motivator is just
They're mercenaries, right? Like,
this is why, Kevin, we are under the society and culture demographic of our podcast and not just history.
there you go. There you go. All right, let's end with a little bit of Heart of Darkness. Caesar ends with a hint at what is to come. The Gauls realize that most of the army so far had been destroyed. So they begin to move deeper into the deep, dark forest.
Deeper and deeper.
Romans quickly found that they suddenly couldn't pursue retreating men as deep into these forests without suffering. Basically, all Gauls are not living in their towns anymore. All Gauls are living as deep in every forest as they can.
Hiding, essentially, or getting ready for an attack?
They are
Both.
hiding. Yeah, they're just doing it all. So now Caesar will explain, like, they'll do a sortie. They'll find some Gauls. They'll fight them. The Gauls will run into the forest. And then the men go in, and he didn't not lose a lot of men.
Right. So
when they over pursued.
This Heart of Darkness stuff, can you like explain to me, because you keep referring to Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, sorry.
Like, what is that?
So Heart of Darkness, the great book by Joseph Conrad, which is also problematic. I get it. But basically his idea is that as this guy goes deeper and deeper into the wilderness, away from society breaks down and it gets like more animalistic.
As he goes away?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can say like, oh, like there's issues with that. Like, it's not like, that's not how the world really is. Like, that's, other societies have just as much value. Like, yes, I agree with all that. But as a literary device, one, it's still really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I think it's a literary device that's been around for a really long time. And so I think Caesar's using that literary device of we're going deeper away from Rome, away where you don't want to go. That's why I'm important. That's
Totally.
why you want us. Right? It's like a natural human kind of xenophobia.
It's adventure, bro.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's the book that ends with
I just
the horror. That's where that comes from.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I'm not privy of any of this Heart of Darkness stuff, so that's why I needed you to like catch me up.
Yeah, he sits like a Buddha without a lotus leaf, so there's truth but no hope.
Okay, so this is like a popular book that I don't know about?
Yeah, it's like the darkest short book you can read.
Oh, really? Was this like I'm in college, Kevin, reading this in like the projector room?
I had to read it in high school. I read it again in college for fun, but I read it in AP Lit, so yeah, it would have been like a college book. My brother read it while he had mono, and he said it was the worst experience of his life.
Bro. Oh, God. Oh, my goodness. Wow. All right. Do you recommend it?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's hugely important for understanding, like, just like how much books can fuck with you.
When was it written?
Good question.
You ballpark it.
No idea. I would say 50s, but I have no idea.
So like 20th century.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. Apocalypse Now is based on the book.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
But Apocalypse Now does Vietnam.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
their difference.
So like the whole him at the end in the jungle, like cutting cows in half and shit.
Yes.
That's like Heart of Darkness
Yes.
shit. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm caught up now.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for listening to me be dumb.
You're not dumb. I'm gonna look up when it was made. I don't want any of my English major friends to get mad at me.
See, this is one of these days, folks. When we are doing this full time, Kevin and I are gonna have a person in here just be like, Heart of Darkness was written in 1899.
Way off. 1899.
So 19th century.
Yeah. Technically. I was pretty close to 20th century. 50 years off.
Joseph Conrad, UK.
It's a novella. It's super short. I highly suggest if you're interested in that kind of stuff, like human psyche and stuff, check it out.
I gotta be in the right mind set for that. Okay.
I don't think you do. It just puts
go in.
It puts you in the mind.
Just do it. Just go.
I read it at the beach, and I was like, "This is not the place to read such an entire book."
All right, maybe I'll get mono and read it.
I don't recommend that. Okay. Also, Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, awesome movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made Hannah watch the documentary on it. We haven't watched the movie yet together.
Oh, dude, start with the movie. Are we not getting into the Heart of Darkness? Is that for next episode?
That's for next episode.
Sads.
Yeah.
You know what I feel like, Kevin? You telling me this story? I feel like one of the savage kids in his bed with my grandpa reading me the Princess Bride.
Whoa. That's nice.
That's a hella nice compliment.
That's nice.
Yeah. But truly, like you have me, just so listeners know, like I didn't do any research on this. This is Kevin leading the way, and I am eating this shit up.
It's hard because when I write it out, I'm like, oh, how are people going to want to listen to Caesar win every conflict? But there's such near run things when he's describing it, and he doesn't kind of win every single one.
No, this is fun. No, this is good. I enjoy it. It's making me nervous for my next series or like episode when I have to cover something, but it's okay.
I just can't wait till we get to the siege within a siege.
Siege on top of siege on top of siege.
It's siege
Nordstrom's.
Inception.
Siege Inception. A siege sims.
Siege sims.
Can't do it. Yeah, siege on top of siege on top of siege. Nordstrom's.
There you go.
Like racks on top of racks on top of racks.
Yeah. Stacks on stacks.
Rich people go shopping all because of boredom. All right. Well, thank you for listening. I imagine we'll be here next week as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we ain't going nowhere, folks. Me and Kevin have found a stride. Whoo!
Thank you, everybody who's been listening. We have like 70 people. We have 70 fans,
Dude,
according to our data right now.
Things are going really well with you listeners and the interaction online. I don't know. I can't even describe to you how grateful I am for all of the listeners. Yes. Kevin and I got some stickers and some stuff like that coming down the pipe. We're going to be doing some stickers and some keychains giveaways. We're just trying to create our little Battle Buddies brigade of people out there who want to be interested in true crime adjacent stuff.
The Battle Buddies Brigade is the triple B, not the triple D. Triple B.
I like it.
Yeah.
The triple B, the Battle Buddies Brigade. If any of you guys have ideas and you're bored at work one day and you come up with some like Battle Buddies ideas that you would put on a sticker, send it to us, dude.
Yes.
We will absolutely print that shit.
Right now, it's literally Spencer and I texting each other in bed, like pictures, like, is this one kind of funny?
Yeah.
There's no Dolly Parton in it. She's a good actor, though.
Yeah, truly. So, like, if you guys have ideas and you're bored, like, hit us up. I have been making a huge effort to be as interactive as humanly possible on the social medias. So, just thank you for everybody who's listening. If you guys want to hit us up, if you want to come on the show, hit us up. Like we want guests. We want to talk to you.
Yeah, we were just talking about a guest today. Yeah.
Super stoked for where this is going, guys. And literally, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for people listening.
Yep.
So, thank you for the continual support. We've been able to get our ad read, which will help with some little bit of cheddar on the side. And things are going good. We're going to be continuing our Julius Caesar. And I'm currently writing my narrative for a modern war tale.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You have to start thinking of some little nuggets to sprinkle in.
There's
I got the one you just did. That was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
Okay.
That was good.
It's a modern war tale, and I'll tell you, it was about 30 years ago.
There you go.
Yeah. Like literally 30 years ago.
A lot of shit happened 30 years ago.
There you go. Google it. So thank you for listening, folks. We appreciate you. We'll see you next week, and bonsai.
Bonsai!